All right, howdy. We are Group 11, and we've been assigned the question, where should bottlenecks be located in a process, and what can you do if you can't move the bottleneck's position, as well as describing the drum buffer rope instance that occurs when we can't move that bottleneck. So in order to do so, we created a autoclave aerated concrete factory. We had a lot of moving parts, and we thought it'd be a good model to kind of represent these bottlenecks. And within this factory, we can change our storage area, some of our other quantities, and the capacities and rates as well. And so we're going to get right into that. So if we load up the factory, you see a 2D model right there, and we're going to move into the 3D model as well. So here, let me speed up the rate a little bit to get our factory going. But what we see right here is we start off our factory by mixing and pouring our concrete. When this concrete mold has been filled with concrete, it then goes into a rising area. Within this rising area, we can change our capacity. Right now, we're sitting at a capacity of about 10 concrete molds. And we're going to change that to 40 later on and show you the difference in how bottlenecks can move around. So after this concrete has been aerated, it goes on down into a cutting line. And we'll speed up a little bit to see some action moving on right there. There it goes. Okay, so we can see that concrete going in and it's getting cut, and then it's being moved over to our next process. Our next process being called these buffer tracks. And we can see our concrete that's been cut was loaded on there and moved into one of these tubes on this right. The tubes on the right are our autoclaves. In this state, our concrete is going to be pressurized and heated until the state that it's been deemed correct, where it can be moved into our unloading zone and then shipped off to our future manufacturers. So let's go back to our global view. And I'm going to pass it off to Ethan, who's going to talk about our bottlenecks at the state of our factory right now.
Thanks. Our bottlenecks currently are located with the riser, but as you can look at statistics, we can see that there's a lot of movement. We have a lot of working going on, but there is some waiting for the next service, and that is at the tilt crane area. We can see that in the red, indicating that they're waiting around and that our bottleneck is going to be right around there. And then for the rest of it, we can be able to understand a lot of areas that this is the one spot that's really holding up our bottleneck.
So if we look at our units per, we've had it set at 10, its capacity, but we are increasing it to 40. So we can see what the impact of increasing that initial bottleneck would have to the system. So as you can see, the mix and pouring is pumping out more product that goes into the next step, which is the rising area. And here you can see that the second stage is getting full, and eventually it'll reach capacity where now it'll have to, step one will have to wait to make sure there's enough space to push out a product to second stage as a product is rising and drying, which allows it to go to the third cutting stage. So the bottleneck moved once the capacity increased up front, but then it caused another bottleneck at the second stage or upstream.
So in a factory, the preferred place to have a bottleneck is at the start position of whatever you're manufacturing. In this case, it's the mix pouring would be the very start. But as you can see, as everything was sped up, it was the rising area that is the actual bottleneck, which is the second in line. So when your bottleneck is not at the very start, you have to use the theory of drum buffer rope, where the drum is the constraint or the bottleneck. The buffer is the measure of time or the work in process. And the rope is how we control the release of new work. So in this model, we have the the bottleneck, which is the rising area, because it can't keep up with the mixed cast. So to deal with that, you want to make sure that the work in process in the rising area does not become too much for it. And you have a large buildup, like you can see here, all of these green casts are ready to be placed and moved over, but there is not enough capacity for this machine to move them into the cutting area. And so to fix this, you should have a rope or a release system to make sure you have a timed system in place, so you do not build up too much work in process into the plant and could have issues overloading the system. You could have, in this case, maybe cement is cured too long that can't be cut easily. So you need to make sure that the rope is releasing the right amount so that the bottleneck is always working, but it does not have too much work in process built up in front of it.